CCCR, or Centre for Creative and Cultural Research, investigates the ancient, innovative relationship between social culture and creative production. Based in the Faculty of Arts and Design at the University of Canberra, we generate scholarship and artwork in a wide array of humanities, social science, applied and creative disciplines. You are listening to a fresh presentation from the CCCR's Culture and Creativity Seminar Series. To learn more about the Centre's work, please follow the links in the program notes. This podcast was recorded on the unceded lands of the Ngunnawal and Ngambri peoples.
Hi everybody, my name is Paul McGee. I'm the Director of the Centre for Creative and Cultural Research here at the University of Canberra. I want to start by acknowledging that we are on the lands of the Ngunnawal and Ngambri people and that these lands were never ceded. I also want to pay my respects to all Aboriginal people, past and present. Now, today's speaker has delivered me with an incredibly modest bio, which says, Kim Huynh teaches politics at the Australian National University and hosts ABC Radio Canberra's Sunday Brunch. He cares for his father and is a member of Carers ACT. Lovely, nice, succinct bio. I'm also going to amplify it just a little bit. Kim received the ANU Vice-Chancellor's Award for Excellence in Teaching for his courses on refugee politics and political philosophy. He's the Deputy Head of the ANU Humanities Research Centre. Kim has authored acclaimed books on Australia's refugee politics and on contemporary Vietnam. And I think, it's really impressive with Kim's bibliography, the way he has managed to work across both highly specialised academic fields and also trade publications. So his works include Australia's Refugee Politics in the 21st Century, Stop the Boats, which was the 2023 monograph for Routledge, Children and Global Conflict, a co-authored work for Cambridge University Press, a collection of stories about contemporary Vietnam entitled Vietnam As If, and a highly acclaimed biography of his parents, Where the Sea Takes Us, which was released by HarperCollins in 2009. And just finally, I'm going to note that Kim ran as an independent candidate in the 2016 ACT election and also the 2022 federal election. So we're going to hear from a pretty extraordinarily accomplished individual today. Please join me in welcoming Kim.
Yuma, everyone. Thanks for coming. Thanks, Paul, for that generous introduction. Today I'm going to talk about, my sister-in-law says that I've always have a mad project running. And this was probably one of the maddest of my projects. It consumed me for much of last year. It's called the Statement from Australia's Carers. And it sits atop the strategy, the new strategy, the national strategy for carers. It's a huge deal. There's a national strategy out every 10 years or so. I'll tell you more about how I came to write this statement. But particularly, I think it's worth noting that there's 3 million or so. We're talking about unpaid carers in particular, not support workers who are paid. We're in grade 2 in many cases, but rather unpaid carers. There's about 3 million in Australia and about 55,000 in the ACT. And almost all of them are my heroes, without exception. So it's a real honour for me to be representing them and writing a short, succinct, powerful document that encapsulates many of their stories and increases their recognition. By and large, the aim, if I had to say it succinctly, the aim of the statement is to make carers and caring cool, or make it known that they're cool. And this is a big deal. What I mean by cool is that individually, their hearts should swell and they should recognise how capable they are. But I think economically too, there should be more recognition, $70 billion or so of unpaid work by carers. But also, I think economically, it's important because they recognise their skills and that they get superannuation and various rights that they have, carers. But also, I think society, in the social terms, increasing recognition means heaps. For me, care, I've got way into care, whether it be philosophically, politically, in terms of real life people. I think in some ways it's more important than love, at least instrumentally. I suspect care makes more things go around than love. So it's a big deal for me last year, and it all had to be funneled into 3 paragraphs. So I'll read that out halfway through. I thought I'd spend a little bit time at the start talking about what care means to me. I care for my old man. He cares for me in many ways too, and certainly has in the past with my mum and my son. And so I'll show you a video of that. We'll talk about care philosophically. I'll also talk in community terms about and play some voices and stories of carers from the ACT, carers who I interviewed in 2019 and 2020. And that was before Dad and I had this caring relationship, and they really changed my outlook on life. And you'll hear why in just a minute. And then, because I know Paul is an expert in this area, I'll just read through a poem that for me encapsulates what caring means too, before we look at the statement. So those things feed into the statement, and I'll go through the sausage making process of the statement, and we can look at that. So first the video. I'm going to do multimedia too. This is me and my dad. We just live down the road next to Canberra Waters. And this is what we do almost every opportunity we have, every afternoon. So I'll say while we're playing, Dad had a stroke on the 3rd of September 2021. It's his 2nd stroke. It left him with double vision, vision impairment, cognitive issues. He's got 2 cancers bubbling away, and he's got a lot of mobility issues. He's got trauma from being refugees, has insomnia. And look at that. How good is that? Let's go again. Let's go again. So why is this important for me? I don't brag about a lot of things, but I love this. I look at this quite often, really regularly, even though I do it with Dad every afternoon that we can. I think it's in, it's going for too long, isn't it? Is it on repeat? So I want to talk about mindfulness and the mindfulness of caring, what it means to me. I'll also talk about what I call the intelligences of caring, and then the equanimity of caring. If you don't like those words, they can all be translated into how not to lose your shit so much as a carer, right? But let's be a little bit sophisticated because we're at the CCCR. So why this is exemplary in terms of caring for me is 3 R's. And I'll talk about how I've learned a lot about mindfulness. It's so important when you're under the pump, full stop, but particularly as a carer, I think. And I'll note that there is a bit repetitiveness of it, obviously, but it's not just the end result of us playing ping pong. It took ages. We're still improving, but it took ages to get to that point. As I said, Dad's got double vision. He's got depth perception issues. We start rolling the ball. I'm learning on YouTube videos how to play. And in many ways, this is not, we've said to this many times, Dad, so I'm not making fun of you when I say that Dad doesn't so much have a blind spot, but he has a seeing spot. So it takes a lot of repetition. But what I'd say about that is that it's not that playing is the end point, the repetition itself, each stroke and getting there is the end point. It's not a rocky moment. It's not a Sisyphean moment where you roll the boulder up the hill and you watch it fall down. Every moment is mindful and wonderful for us. A moment to be present with each other without judgment, as they say about mindfulness, you know. I'll also say this is really important, the ritualized side of our ping pong. In the daily sense, it marks that we got through another day, like the beer I have with my mum. It really is important, something to look forward to, something that's low investment, but high value, a ritual to mark the end of a day. And then it's beer with mum. And then there's other things that mum has to do with Dad all night too. So it's quite a routine. You need those punctuated spots to pause and say, have a good time, not think about stuff, but also to be reflective and gather meaning. The rhythm, and I should say there's intergenerational rituals going on there too. On the weekend, so I can have a break, my son Xavier will have a hit with Dad, and then they get a sense of belonging from that ritual. They get a sense of where they've been, where they're going, and who they are. I think that's really important too, to my understanding of mindfulness and care. And there's a rhythm about it too. Left, right, left, right. I think sometimes often talk about management, people talk about flow. I'm almost sick of hearing about flow, but I think it's sometimes misunderstood that you have to surf as perfect wave or play at the Sydney Opera House or something to have flow. My understanding from hanging out with Dad is that really flow moments are far more accessible to us if we're open to them. And this is one for me. And that's where it comes down. Really thought hard, and it is really hard to condense and say what the value of caring for someone is. And for me, it's being in sync with someone. Like, you're rarely in sync with people, that you know about their bodily functions, you know about how they sleep, when they wake, that you're so in tune with them in a high resolution sort of way. So that's one way of understanding caring for someone for me, being really deeply in sync with someone, and they're in sync with you, of course, too. And that's the joy, the pleasure of caring, the honor of caring comes from being so connected, in sync with someone. So it's not all a happy story. It's really, really difficult too. And there are many things in this photo that point to me to the sadness and loss that comes with caring often. Dad used to be a pro tennis player. He's excellent, not pro professional, but pro in mindset, you know, really, really strong tennis player. Everyone wanted to play with Dad. You can see there too, there's a tarp over a kayak that I haven't used in 3 years. They're just too busy, too stressed. There's a screen door behind Dad. Such is the stress of caring that we took the screen door off upon the advice of OTs and my sister-in-law. Just one less thing to juggle when you've got keys, you've got a walking stick, you're helping Dad, you've got meds, you're going to multiple appointments. The door gets in the way. That happens all the time. I was surprised. It's not just us. That's how stressful and busy it is that you take the door off. We've lost the hinge anyway now, so it's going to come back on. So, and there's actually, my sister-in-law too, you can see through the screen doors, there's a bed there. So really a loss of household too. We moved the bed downstairs, so Mum and Dad don't have to go up the stairs so often. It means no midnight snacks, so I've lost quite a bit of weight since we reconfigured our house. But so there's loss too, but I think if we always, and when I get to the poem, I hope I'll reinforce this message more. We have to face and deal with that loss. But if we're always dwelling upon it, I suppose this is the difference between grieving and lamenting. You have to grieve your losses, right? And living with someone with dementia often is a living grief in some ways. You have to face that. You have to let that grief do its work. But at the same time, I think it's important not to dwell on it because you'll never appreciate those wonderful flow, mindful moments that you have as a carer and as anyone really. So that's a mindfulness. I'll push through these. There's a couple more of the meaning of caring before we get to the statement, which is sort of the most boring bit really in some ways, but there's different value in that. So these are 3 snippets, 1-minute interviews I've got with carers. I didn't know anything about caring 5-6 years ago, but I got in contact with a couple of carers. I was a roving reporter for ABC Radio Canberra at the time. And I thought, these people are amazing. These people, they're like, and they really have come, some of them I'm still friends with, but they're like my Taylor Swift or my Grace Tame or, or Hannah Arendt. I don't really need them. I've got all these things in these people around me, wisdom and strength and courage. I'm almost nervous sometimes when I meet them. So I wanted to play for you a theme that I've picked up in these series of carer interviews that I did over 2 years. I probably did a dozen or more. And I really worked on getting me out of it and having the person who's cared for interview the carer and ask questions like, what's it been like? What's the high point? Really simple questions often, but you'll hear that are so evocative and so rich. And I picked up one of their skills in their utility belts of carers. And I don't have the right word for this. I know Owen Bullock's here, so Paul will come up with a better word. But it's not empathy. You'll hear it in a minute. It's not empathy with this person they're caring for, the carers, but there's an intelligence about it, an ability to embrace their reality. And it's a really practical awareness of them that you'll hear in just a minute. The first one is with 2 brothers. I can use their names, Shay and Talon. So Shay's the older brother, and he's got cerebral palsy, and Talon, and amongst others, look after Shay. And Talon's a really cool guy, right? So I interviewed him when he was about 12, 13, tween age. There's a lot going on then. and he's a triathlete. My brother's family knows him. So he's really invested in being strong, being cool. And yet he looks after his older brother. That is not cool for most tweens. And you hear that in his voice too. But I ask you, listen to his acceptance and maybe even embracing of Shay's intelligence.
What do you get out of caring for me?
Yeah, I do think it does make me more resilient as well as a stronger leader. Even just playing sport, I feel like I'm able to sort of control people better and listen to them, not just voice my opinion, but also listen to other opinions.
What's been challenging?
Again, just being able to listen and being able to respond in the right ways and sort of understand you as a person and how you want things done and being able to help you with that. So sometimes even when you do a math equation and you want to work things out in a not so mathematically correct way, you'll do things in like a weird pattern where you'll times things against other things which don't really make sense to me. So just being able to understand that and sort of work it out with you is always a challenge, but it's a good one as well.
So the hardest of science is mathematics, and he does it in a weird way. It doesn't work for me, but I can see that it works for you, and we'll work it out together. Okay? It's more than empathy. It's an embracing of this person's hard science reality of mathematics. This next one almost should come with almost a content warning. This is they go by the names in this of Elle and Lynn. Elle, I think it's 1 in 200 people, had a severe psychosis episode. Usually it happens in your late teens, as I understand, and that was the case with Elle. And I don't want to even go through the list of stuff that Elle and Lynn had to go through together. But Elle, one of the things that Elle did was so they were secular, and then they found the occult, and they were seeing these demons. And have a listen to the discussion first. I'll tell you what happened afterwards with respect to the occult.
When it started to get worse, what were you observing? What was happening?
I think it got worse pretty quickly. I mean, things escalated over the following few months. You changed as a person. You'd always been an atheist, and suddenly you developed an interest in a particular religion, in the occult, and that you knew logically it was all crap. Sorry, that's probably the wrong word, rubbish. But your normal reasoning wouldn't accept that. So you were very attached to believing every word of it. And you started wandering at night. You would go outside because you had to worship the moon. You had to go out and meditate, and then you would hallucinate, and then you would disappear from where I was, like the world I exist in. There were times when you didn't even recognise me. You would just stare straight through me and you would see me as a threat. Yeah, it got pretty frightening because you could just get up and wander off in the night.
Yeah.
And so I went for several months with very poor sleep.
Were you ever worried at any point for your own safety?
Not really. There was a moment I found you on the couch with a knife in your hand, a sharp knife in your hand, and I had to wrestle it off you. But I didn't sense that you wanted to hurt me with it. I thought that you wanted to protect yourself from whatever you were seeing. And you'd been telling me that you could see 2 worlds. You said you could see one world out of your left eye, and in that world everybody wore these weird masks, and then the other world was where I was, but you weren't sure which one was real. So that was pretty upsetting too, because it's like, I'm the real one, believe me, you know, and you didn't really trust me anymore. And that went on and on and on and on and on for months.
Yeah.
And it was really scary. It was really, really scary.
How would you say that all of these, I guess you could say, trials have affected you?
I knew that was coming. I was just thinking, I don't know if I want to answer that. I don't like saying this stuff in front of you. It's hard.
It's fine. No, go ahead.
It's affected me very deeply.
Yeah.
You don't remember much of what happened, but I do. And so I feel like I'm the one that's been through a trauma. You might have had the mental illness, but I've been traumatized by that. And I'm still working through that.
Yeah.
I'm still working through that fear of losing you.
Yeah.
And that's why I don't really like answering that question, because I can't say it in any kind of positive way.
But it doesn't need to be a positive thing. It is reality. And I'm sorry that you had to go through that.
It's not your fault. It just is. But
yeah, but it still doesn't mean that I can't empathize, you know?
Thanks.
So you see why these people are my heroes, you know? So what did Lynn do? Well, when Elle asked her mum to say, I'm seeing demons through my left eye. Can you cover it up for me? She covered it up. She covered it up. She didn't say, no, that's wrong. Get into my reality as much as she wanted to. This is what I have to do as a carer. I'm not going to embrace that reality necessarily, but I'll take it on. I'll take it on for you. What a hero. What a person. And also I note there when I talked about being in sync, those two are incredibly in sync with each other. It's totally a bilateral relationship. You can hear Elle caring for Lynn too, even in that short 1 minute 30 snippet. The next one is just short 30 seconds with Deirdre Moon. Deirdre Moon is from a small town not far from here, Canberra, and she was in a controlling relationship. Her husband was a Vietnam vet, and he got a violent form of dementia, Lewy body's dementia. It's often sometimes manifests as a violent form, and he tried to kill her twice. But he'd sort of obviously there was coercive control going on, and he'd isolated her, and she had to get lawyers for him. She cared for him for 10 years like that. Here's how she dealt with his reality.
You have to have routines. So we always got up fairly early in the morning. I would make sure he was showered okay, and we'd sit and have breakfast together. And then he would just sit on the lounge. Sometimes we'd go out, we'd go shopping, or we'd go out to the club. He loved looking at shops. He loved pretty things. And one of the places he loved was the dinosaur museum. Not to see the dinosaurs. We never got past the shop because he used to love walking around looking at all the gemstones. And he'd get to the big bin where all the different stones were. Oh, he used to love rubbing his hands through them and picking them up. Yeah, it was very interesting.
What a story. I can't even go past the dinosaur museum without thinking about that, because this Michael Moon, her husband's a huge bloke, and you can imagine what he'd done with those hands, but she took him to that barrel and stood there with this huge bloke as he went through those gemstones. So I've got plenty of those, and you can see, so I want that to funnel into the statement too. The wisdom, the stories, the honor of being with those people. I want that to be reflected in those 3 paragraphs that I'm about to read for you. That was probably the greatest challenge, to be honest. That was the weight that I felt the most. I'll go through this poem rather quickly, but it's a wonderful poem. Thanks to Poetry Unbound, one of my favorite podcasts, and thanks to Rita Dove, who writes this poem about calling up her brother, who's a primary carer for her mother. And the importance of this poem, I think, for me, is that it brings together that mindfulness that I was talking about, being present in the moment without judgment, and also that intelligence of being able to accept others, right? Accept its intelligence beyond empathy, beyond tolerance. And I've termed it equanimity, but it might not be right either. But it's so she calls up, her mum's got advanced dementia. She calls up her brother, Rita Dove, and her brother is the primary carer. And I'll just read out the first part. Every evening I call home and my brother answers. Each evening my rote patter, his unfailing cheer, until he swivels, leans in, louder. It's your daughter, Mum. Want to say hello to Rita? My surprise each time that he asks, believes in asking. Hello, Rita. A good day then. The voice as fresh as I remember. I close my eyes to savour it, but don't need the dark to see her, younger than my daughter now, wasp-waisted and in her home-sewn coral satin with all of bebop yet to boogie through. So I've got the link there. Go have a listen to the podcast, but it's a contrast between, I want to be like the brother, but I'm often like Rita. See, Rita's calling up. Rita has hang-ups, expectations. She's looking back like Orpheus, if you know the full story. Wants her mother to be wasp-waisted when she was vibrant, when she danced, when she had all of bebop yet to boogie through her. But the brother has equanimity. And look at those 10 words. They're just totally common words, but they show so much poise and so much judgment and so much strength and acceptance of his and her mother's state. He's got little prompts. He doesn't push his mum to say, be who you were before or be who you are to me. It's your daughter. Little prompt. Give her a name. You want to say hello to Rita. Not that you have to say hello, that you have to be who you were before, that you have to be sharp. Do you want to say hello to Rita? An acceptance of her and where she's at and a being with her. What wonderful 10 words. As I said, I want to be like that guy. Show that equanimity. I'll move through. I won't talk about Greek mythology because we want to get to this carer statement. So, as I said, months and months liaising with all sorts of carers, bureaucrats, traveling now and then to different parts of the country to meet an advisory board, came up with this statement. And as I said, I was trying to funnel through the interviews that I had and the people I knew who were carers, want to funnel into that some of my personal experiences and also some poetry. Possibly failed on all fronts, but I'll read it through and then we'll go through some of the process and the nitty-gritties of this statement. From across Australia, we acknowledge caring as natural and rightful. We honour its many forms, embedded in Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander kinship and country, enriched by people of diverse backgrounds and outlooks. To be a carer is to be a partner, a family member, a neighbour, a mate. Sometimes we don't consider ourselves to be carers. It's something we just do. Whether it be out of love, tradition, or necessity, our contributions are essential to daily life. There's two more bits. With ingenuity and resilience, carers keep Australia going. For us to keep going, we must be recognised and supported as individuals with our own needs who attend to the needs of others. This includes young carers who, out of fear and embarrassment, conceal that we look after our family members and others. Lifelong carers who are ageing in anguish, wondering who will watch over our loved ones. Carers sandwiched between generations, often foregoing our relationships, income, and well-being. Such shortfalls are not ours as carers, but ours as a nation. When our responsibilities are shared, our resolve and our communities grow. We seek understanding, support, and respect from the nation for the impact of caring in all its forms on our lives. We seek to partner with the people we care for and with the organisations that support both them and us. We make this statement from strength, appreciating the challenges and rewards of caring, knowing that demand for us is rising, believing that when Australians care for one another, we flourish. And they're my three carer mates there, caring for old fellows with dementia. So it'd be great to have a chat. So I'll go through this in like 10 minutes or so, but just yell anytime if you have questions. I thought we'll go through different types of sausage making and then the entrails. And I'd love to hear your thoughts on all of this. I met with Carers ACT. I'm a member of Carers ACT, and we had a meeting with the Minister, Amanda Rishworth. And all I said was, this is coming out of the failed, inverted commas, referendum on the Voice. And I said, I so admire the Uluru Statement from the heart. We're doing this new carers statement. There's an existing statement for carers. Let's have a statement from carers that's inspired by the Uluru Statement from the heart. And you can see it's three parts. It's who we are, our struggle, and a call to action, which is I plagiarised from the Uluru Statement from the heart, and many other things are based on that too. I teach political philosophy a bit. So Plato is very influential on me and on this. His idea was that preambles are like preludes to songs and poems or something like that, that they're important for laws because they turn people to the laws and get them invigorated and willing to abide by them, if not support them with all their might. So he was well into preambles, and I thought a bit about that when I did that too, this too. And I looked up a bit of, I remembered the 1999 Republic referendum and how John Howard in parts tried to scuttle that in several ways, but one was to add another question, and that was to add a preamble to the Constitution. The Australian Constitution doesn't have one. So he got the poet laureate of sorts and his mate, I think Les Murray, to write a poem for it, the preamble. And Les Murray's good on this. Les Murray's good on a lot of things, regardless of what you think about him. He talked about whole speak as opposed to narrow speak. I think that inspired a lot of his stuff, that whole speak appeals to one's mind, body, and spirit, and is creative and expressive, whereas narrow speak is instrumental and beholden to convention. So you can see what I'm going to, bureaucratic speech, political speech, by and large, is narrow speak, according to him. But he had a terrible experience, even though he's mates with Howard. he said that his initial preamble went through what he called, I think, the mush machine, and came out totally different, and he didn't like it, but that was probably always going to happen. I quite liked, I won't go into detail, but I quite liked Murray's original preamble, and I had a good look at that too. Okay, the bureaucratic sausage making, that was tiresome at times, but not entirely. I think the tricky thing here is that, I mean, the department is all about narrow speak. They want everything to be tied up and only have one possible meaning, whereas the poets here know better than me. I think there was a reasonable estimation that the poet, if works well, should do 20% of the work, and the reader does 80% of the work. You know, you pull the strings. Well, well, probably, yeah. Well, I'd probably go the other way around. But obviously the department wants to do 100% of the work, and therefore that often means that there's an evacuation of meaning and expression. So that's a challenge. That's a challenge in itself. And also, you know, how many times you've written something that you really want to write together at a fine level? It's even every author wants to be authorial, wants to have autonomy, whereas there are institutional guidelines, and the institution wants authority, and they're going to take responsibility for it at the end. But I should say, at the same time, everyone at DSS, including the minister, had been a carer at the same time. So that's what made me stupid enough to take this on in some ways, because everyone was on the same page. Everyone wanted the same thing. And there's a turn in politics too. Remember that 11, 12 years ago now, there's a statement for Australia's carers. Everyone knew that now it's all about taking it from disability. Nothing about us without us. We need a statement from Australian carers. So everyone was on the same page. I was happy to be on that page too. Of course, they haven't got rid of the statement for Australia's carers. That's still there too. We've just slapped on from carers, which adds to that bureaucratic mindset that you just keep having more and more. You see that at universities too when new leaders come. So stakeholders, that was a real bone of contention at several times too. So there was an advisory board that represented Australia's carers, and everyone agreed. Let's who's in and out. This is I'm shaking thinking about this. There was some real fights over this. I think some people, and I went through punters too, punters who I knew, not poets, not writers, just people trying to say, will this appeal to you, right? Some people don't like the tip of the lid to Indigenous care and care of country. That could go, that's deep and huge, and really, like many things, that's our future lies in their wisdom and their culture, I think, and that connection to country. So we've got the big C country in there, but we didn't put it at the top because some stakeholders and focus type folks didn't like it, and rightfully so, I think, didn't want to look like it was an automatic gesture that we put at the start. So all I've done there is just push it down a few lines. Hardly rocket science, but I think that was important. So they're in. There was someone representing queer carers, and I was like, what does that even mean? But it means something. It means a lot. Queer carers it evolves out of that idea of chosen family, their disenfranchisement from traditional families, but also from the AIDS epidemic from the 80s. There was a queer care that evolved out of that from people while they had AIDS and HIV. And so I learned about that. There was a push to get queer caring in there with all the acronyms and all that stuff. That hurts the poetic nature of it, right? So they're out, they're gone. There was also a push there's a whole bunch of other pushes too for different carers, right? But what happens in the end? We'll just go easy demographics, because demographics won't step on anyone's toes so much, and everyone fits into, you can see young, lifelong older carers, and then sandwich generations like me. So that was the compromise. First Nations people are in. Women carers, that was the main one too. I had a big fight with the sisterhood, because a lot of care is done by older women in particular. But I mean, something that you go through is like, sometimes we don't consider ourselves to be carers. It's something we just do. Incorporates called carers, First Nation carers, and women carers to recognise that what they do instinctively sometimes, or have foisted upon them because of their social circumstances. But you can see that took a fair bit of negotiation, who's in and who's out. And we just went with age there too. But so a lot of compromise. And I did say that it wasn't all bad working with the bureaucracy. It wasn't. They gave me that term, the strength-based, and you can see that feeds through my interviews. I didn't want to say we're in need or that we're care bears. No, you need us. there'll be need for more of us in the future. So you better get used to us crying out and being assholes and being loud. You know what I mean? But that was the bureaucracy said, yes, we're going to make this a strength-based approach, and they emphasize that throughout the process, strength-based approach. So I really appreciated that input from the bureaucracy and the various pen pushers and the shiny bums. And then I thought maybe everyone here will be better than me at this, I suspect. We'll just go through some of the bits that really pissed me off. I think Paul knows this. At the end, I'll put something in there, right? It wasn't perfect, but it took ages. I know there are some people online who helped me, and we got in there. And then the last minute, did they make the changes without even telling me? They certainly didn't consult with me, but it's Australia's statement, right? It's not my statement. That's one of the conflicts. But anyway, and the last minute I've gone, I've got cold feet. Let me have one more go. Let me have one more go. And it won't take long. You don't have to pay me or nothing. Just give me one more go. And I got the wonderful email. It has passed through the committee. It is now with cabinet. We no longer need your input on this. That's what I'm up against. Anyway, so that's where it ended up. But I'll go through some of the bits that should we do that? I'll go through acknowledging First Nations care. I've noticed before. Mate, we had a lot of, if you want to go through a fine text analysis, we'll see we've got mate, a neighbour, a mate. Now, the sisterhood had issues with that because there's a blokiness about it. I put it in originally just because, remember, I shopped it a bit with punters, and mate worked with them. And really, we're trying to reach out to people who aren't in this sector and want to have something distinctive. Otherwise, the Canadians will do one and sound the same. So I thought mate works, the committee approved, mate goes in. Really happy to have a discussion about the pros and cons of that. What else? Oh, my bits and their bits. So I've underlined a few of their bits. Okay, I'm not going to. So it's Australia's statement. So I'm not going to be snarky about this. But you can imagine if you write a poem or a song, and people change a bit, without necessarily consulting, that can really get on your nerves. And so I read. This is the first time I've looked at it in any seriousness in 6 months. So yeah. So I'm going to try to just be composed. I'm going to have equanimity, like Rita Dove's brother. So I've got issue with, we acknowledge caring as fundamental. So remember, I put something in that I believe is coherent at least, right? And they say, no, we'll make our tweaks and then we'll put it to cabinet. As fundamental to life, the essence of our connections. It used to have a gift of life, but that's actually the catchphrase of the organ donation people. So rightfully, we took that off, and they've had their go, but they've added as fundamental to life. The essence of our connection doesn't really mean anything to me, to be honest. The essence of our connections. Connections are good in and of themselves. Why do we need an essence of connections? I wouldn't have gone for that. I don't know how that, I've been stonewalled after this. So I don't know how that came out and get in there. I don't know who did it. And then they have the, repetition works sometimes too, but I don't think it's you have to be cognizant of it and want to be doing something. They've got life at the end too. So fundamental to life, it really key places in that line and at the end. I didn't really like life there. I know I'm getting finicky. Probably more interesting is I had enriched by people of different backgrounds and outlooks, just because diverse brings in diversity, equity, inclusion. Suddenly Donald Trump's on your back. But I think the better principle is that different works. Different works. Why go to a politicized term when different is an everyday term that avoids that politicization? But no, they needed that. They needed their stakeholders to say that we're acknowledging diversity. So different goes out, I assume. I don't know. No one's ever told me. Diverse goes in, right? So the middle part will leave for a minute. And this whole sentence, down the bottom, that's theirs too. Although, it's all us. It's all us as Australians. We seek understanding, support, and respect from the nation for the impact of caring in all its forms on our lives. My slight concern with that is, and I love it all, is that I think it sounds a bit desperate. We've said support here, and we also say support. Support comes in again too. So support's here and support's there. I find that that evokes a bit of desperation, and it's unrecognized repetition too. And also in all its forms should be the impact of caring in all its forms. That's in an odd place after that comma for my liking. The impact of caring, is it caring in all its forms? It should be, I think it relates to what they're saying, that impact, you have many forms of impact on your life, whereas there's some ambiguity. But then you see, I've sat with this way too long and far too precious. But I suppose, and the poets know this too, that's the beauty and the privilege of writing, that you can sit for things and you can work towards perfection. And it can be you can be overly cognizant maybe. Okay, so that's the pettiness of me put aside. Oh no, let's go through. Yeah, and the other thing is I did an interview recently. It was really a high pressure interview with the team that puts together the Australian Style Manual. So I got another view on this too, but I had to go back to the Style Manual to try to do this, and that was engrossing, I've got to say, as frustrating it was. And I was frightened even to write an email to the Style Manual people, and rightfully so, because the email exchange took freaking ages, and then to put it online. But one of their main things that they have fights about is lists. And the Australian Style Manual says, and rightfully so, but I couldn't, because you want to be succinct, but they say, beware of overusing colons and semicolons and what you're doing with lists. I'd put this, I don't know if anyone checked it, but the lists was just, the back and forth over lists and punctuation was something special. And that's how it's ended up. I have no idea whether it's right, and I was too afraid to ask the Style Manual people. So that's how, so beware the lists, everyone. And the other one is, I thought the only thing I'll add is that the Australian Carers Statement, that was the original name. It rings a little more true to me. I like the temper of the Australian Carers Statement, but the apostrophe got in the way, because as I understand, there's a grey area about this. We could have written it either way, Australian Carers Statement, but it would have become a distraction because of that grey area, and whether the Australian Carers Statement deserved an apostrophe or not. So we changed the title, and so there's no fight over a statement from Australia's carers. But I think that's you couldn't ask for a smaller thing, but you get a sense of what level negotiations this went down to, and what a project it was for me. And if it wasn't for all those other things that I said before, I don't know if I would have survived the process of writing this. This is caring, well, man, the people in this community, the poetry, that poem, they meant so much to me. I was really happy to push through this process. So that's a statement from Australia's Carers. I know I ended it with rather small things, but I have realised since, and Paul's known, at times I've said this is potentially the worst thing I've ever written, but I don't think so. What I've realised is that, I mean, words are hooks that people connect their stories to, you know, and that this statement is a hook for people. And these words are a vessel that I hope other people will fill with meaning, but you have to work it. You have to work it. And I suppose that's my job now over the coming years, is to work this statement a bit more and have people connect with it and fill it with meaning. So that's part of what I'm doing here today. So thanks very much for having me. I'm really glad to have your questions and comments.
Okay, Kim, thanks so much for that tour of this extraordinary process of arguing over semicolons and apostrophes, but also the huge emotion and care, actually, that comes through everything you presented. I'm going to call upon questions and comments from the floor. Rocco, you've got a question.
You've already answered the question about colons, so thanks for that. Yeah, highly complex process. You would have learned a lot from that. If tomorrow you got the same or similar brief again, say a statement from people being cared for, what would you do differently? What have you learned from this process?
Oh, what a great question. Thanks, Rocco. What would I do differently? I must admit, I've always conceived this as the first, last and only consultancy I'll ever get. So I've never thought about that, but it might not be. It might not be, and fingers crossed. I'd probably be I'd definitely be less uptight. I'd understand that it is necessarily a collective process. Because I'm relatively new to creativity, there's a lot of things I'm learning about creative folk, of how well they take criticism, constructive criticism, how well they often support each other. I know it can be snarky and nasty and stuff too, but the creatives that I've met in the last really 5 or 6 years have shown me that, and have shown me a different way to collaborate. So I'm still working on that, I think I'd definitely do that. I'd probably try to find a way to be less uptight and have less of that authorial presence. I'd take that lesson that I'm so grateful to come here, because I have avoided looking at it. And as I've looked at it again, I knew this anyway. I think, is it a Foucaultian term or is it Derrida, that the reader completes the text? I knew that term before, but that's really helped me look at this again. I try to take that. It is over at a point and people have to tick off on it. But as long as it's stomachable for you, and you can help others complete the text, that if I knew that at the start, I probably would have been less uptight, and more and even more energized about it. Even more energized. So that's why I really appreciate looking at it again. I'm going to keep pushing. I've met carers recently. Went on a wonderful boat ride with a whole bunch of carers just last week. And it reminded me again of how much work there is to do and how worthy that effort is.
Hi, Kim. Thank you. I don't so much have a question, more a observation and a thank you. So my research is artistic responses to royal commissions, which over the last 10 years or so have largely been referred to as truth-telling exercises. So that's the context I'm giving this into you. But I have a son with bipolar type 1, and I just want to say thank you for playing that clip, because every word of that touched me and resonated with me. But I think my point is, I've never heard another mother talk about that illness. And so relaying it back to exercises that allow people to voice their experiences are really important. And I'm sorry it's not about the statement, but I know it kind of led into that. And I just think wherever there's an opportunity for people to tell their stories, difficult though it might be, it's just a beautiful thing. So thank you for giving me that gift today.
Oh, thank you. And I'm sure they don't mind saying, I hadn't seen them for years. I saw them on a carer's boat, one of them, the carer, the mum, and we only had lunch yesterday. So, and I was so nervous of meeting them. She's absolutely, both of them are my heroes. And that, and Ellen there had bipolar as one of the things that led to the psychosis. But and I mean that they also feature in a bringing up some with autism discussions, Autism Month next week. Starting in April. And another thing that reminded me, they taught me about stimming too. I didn't know about stimming, and I see it in lots of things now. And not long ago, you would have said if someone's spinning or someone's doing this, that you'd say, stop that, that's totally wrong. You know what I mean? But you know what the mum did? One of the stimming type things that Elle did was she liked to hit her head. She liked to hit her head. And you can say, that's not great. Objectively, you might think that's not great. But what does Lynn do? I'll get you a soft bottle. I'll get you a soft bottle. You know what I mean? So that's what I mean by it's beyond empathy. And why I say that's an intelligences. It's because there's many intelligences. It's not like IQ. I haven't come up with the right word to figure out what's going on there. But I'm so admiring of it. CNN said of Trump in 2015 that his supporters took him seriously but not literally, while his critics took him literally but not seriously. Now, actually, people take him both ways. But I think that's not a bad line to talk about supporting someone. That often people you're caring for, they do things that you don't get, or do things that don't have filters if you're hanging out with people with dementia, right? but can we find something else, other meaning in there? Take them seriously, not literally. You know?
Thank you, Kim, for your intelligence and humanity. That's the word I would use. Thank you. These issues to me have always been associated with the concept of immaterial labor and the forgetting of it, and then the non-inclusiveness of immaterial labor into our GDP or whatever. Is that something that firstly you agree with, and secondly that we can do anything about?
Yeah, what a great question. I mean, I'm less good on the economic side, but there are plenty of carer advocates who push that something fierce. And also the other side of it is that it not only is a matter of justice, it enables productivity. Yeah. If you treat carers the way they should be treated, you take their labour seriously. Obviously, there's gender dynamics in there too, about what sort of labour is recognised and who's doing it. So I think there's a certain recognition about that. It's quite it's quite a push. But I suppose that's, I mean, yeah. So definitely, but it's probably not my expertise. I do philosophy of sorts, and the ethic of care that came out of feminism. There's been developments in that I'm really trying to get my head across, but it does relate to immaterial labour in this sense. It's actually a massive earthquake to the way we understand and operate in society, that we would move away from the instrumental rationalist ways that we understand our relationships to each other and to society and to work, and move towards an ethic of care. I know some people at UC who are much better at this than me, actually, and trying to implement that in their work. An ethic of care that doesn't have an objective idea of who people are and what things are, but rather takes things in a more situational sort of way and looks at what they can contribute, their different intelligences. You know what I mean? That's quite a big shift into how we relate to people. I really think as I advocate for this more, I've got to get more on top of distilling what the ethics of care are about. And I think this would be a part of it too, understanding the economics of care too. But other people do that way better than me. Most of the advocates do the material side, the economics of care really well. So if I can get my head around the ethics of care as it's developing and make it digestible for people, that's quite an effort for me. I'm writing a book with and about my dad, so I'm really trying to get that. That should be out next year. And I'm really trying to be on top of these sorts of things and ethics of care by then and see how we go. Thanks, Owen.
Thanks, Kim. It was really uplifting to hear those interviews, especially the emotional intelligence of that young man caring for his older brother, and the recognition in the other interview that the caregiver can often be more traumatized and stressed than the one being cared for. But just a comment on that word empathy, and I just wanted to pass on something I'd learned recently from a counselor, which I was very grateful to learn, and that's the difference between empathy and compassion. And basically, empathy says, oh, I really feel your pain, which can be a great thing because the person feels heard, but you can also get bogged down in that. But compassion says, oh, I get you're in a tight spot here. What can I do to help? And that intelligence you spoke about seemed to me, you know, caregivers have empathy and compassion.
Yeah, that's right.
And that seems a really important word.
Yeah, great, thanks. And beyond that, I think there is something transformative about carers, about the caring process of being so in sync with someone that changes who you are. Like I went on this boat trip with ACT carers last week. I thought it would be in a tinny, but right, it was in a 2-story boat. And these events, if you've been in the carers, they are incredible events. Like I rode there, I had like the beer, I had 3 beers, I could hardly ride home. But the carers were just slugging them down, no introductions, no bullshit. Because carers don't take bullshit. They've got their radars are incredible. Their intelligence, they're just right up there. Who are you, Kimbo? You're a loser. Let's talk. Okay, move on. Beer, cake, Portuguese egg tart. Off I go. It was incredible. They're incredible events. I almost can't handle them. They're so intense to me. It's like a rave or something. I can't do it that often. The carers events, it's a transformative process. Total non-bullshit, in your face. incredible people and that also must have incredible vulnerabilities too. That you know, I'm just in awe every time I go to one of those things, you know.
Hi, Kim. Hi, I'm David. I've got an observation and a question. The observation is, well, first, thank you so much for your work and for the statement. My observation was about that kind of element of intelligence that you're talking about and the situational nature of care, you know, because I've thinking about care myself, I've sort of thought about the relation between the kind of terms care and attention. And, you know, when people require care, that there's so much attention required that, you know, you have to, because small things become so magnified and you have to attend to so many details that are very situational and specific. So I really enjoyed that element of your work and the statement and the thinking through of it. That then sort of brought me to the sort of statement itself, which was the kind of nature of the statement as a kind of an advocacy statement, as well as a kind of philosophical statement, I guess. And that sort of brought me to this kind of element in your talk, which was the kind of question of politics, right? Because it's kind of, you're kind of wary about this being a political document at times, and yet it inevitably is a political document. And that I was reflecting on that in relation to the word diverse that you talked about. And, you know, the way, I mean, at the moment, I'm kind of on a project that is looking at diversity practices in organizations. And, you know, came into that project, you know, quite critical of the way in which diversity is often framed and practiced. But of course, the times have shifted since then. And, you know, now we kind of all want to sort of defend diversity to an extent. And it might be really important that that's words actually in the statement in these times. So, yeah, so I guess I wanted to kind of ask you a question about that question of where you sit with that kind of question of politics and the statement in politics.
What a great point. And I see that whereas I've viewed it as a sort of weak-willed effort to abide by convention, now it's become sort of a catch cry against all sorts of nastiness. I mean, I think in terms of I cut my teeth as a scholar more than 25 years ago now, studying the Vietnam War and writing about my parents. And I was always struck by socialist realist push through Vietnam and China and Soviet Union and other places, that they viewed art as life as being more important than art as art for art's sake. But it's a false distinction, of course. But that's why I'm always a bit wary, I think. There's two reasons. I'm worried about the laziness that comes with just putting in words, but also that have to be in there and checking them off. But I'm always worried about the awful sort of socialist realist work that you almost view with irony that's cool in Vietnam by young people now, you know, the square-jawed type sculptures and that sort of stuff, that because it was so stultifying for artists at the time. So that's where I view politics. I was trying to avoid that socialist realist push that art for life's sake, and because it was them who drove who set that distinction, as opposed to art for art's sake, which is nothing, which is measly, you know, which is a whimsical and excessive and personal. So that's where I'm at basically. But as I said, this is all really, I still come at this very basic level, but I understand that there's not that clear distinction. So I suppose I'm just trying to avoid socialist realist art and bureaucratic weasel words and laziness, you know.
Okay, we're going to have time for one quick comment or question from Bethany, and then we've got a comment online I'm going to read as well.
Great. Thank you so much, Kim. Such a generous sharing of your experience and that amazing work. And just thank you for the work that you do across all areas of your life. Mine related back to the comment Kerry was making about how important it was to be hearing those voices. And I actually just found that so powerful. We tend to read the transcripts of the people, of the actual carers or the people that we might be engaging with. So the actual power of hearing those voices. I thought was absolutely incredible and really aligns with that, you know, the feminist ethics of care approach in terms of the embodied and multisensory. And I kind of felt like I'm interested in your approach to language. You know, that's, I mean, you've talked a lot about how difficult it is to contain it to that statement, but language is not enough, right? That written word is not enough, because it was so bloody powerful hearing that, and like your bloody rave experience with the carers also, you know.
Oh, if I could have a mic.
The power of that, right? If we could capture the power of that through that, I'm just interested in.
Yeah, what a great comment. That's
ways of doing it.
Thank you, Bethany. That and Kerry will know this too. Well, I think for me, I'm biased because I work on radio, but I just stumbled into radio. But I think there is something in the contemporary context, and podcast speaks to this too, the popularity of podcasts. I don't know if they're on the down now, but there is a Goldilocks element of audio that it's not as hard to invest in as many words, but it's not as stupid and easy to invest in as TV and movies. So it makes you complete the audio and evoke something. So that's what I'm always trying to do. I don't know if it's about testimony too, isn't it? That I don't know if those your Royal Commissions can just have audio rather than other things, you know, and or just sit the commissioners down, make them listen to stuff rather than read those huge things. So the listening might be more evocative, but also hit that sweet spot. So yeah, what a great point. I think about that even more. But it does take a lot of work. I felt those snippets, like those interviews, because they were those people, I didn't know them, but they meant so much to me. Knew they might not ever get a chance to be on radio again, you know. Like the story I wrote about my parents is where the sea takes us. I mean, so much to our family. I always told myself, this is wrong. This is the wrong thing to do. If I was interviewing these people, this is their way where the sea takes us. You better get this right. You better get this right. But that sort of pressure means you actually get things wrong when you put that on yourself, you know. So that's all I'd say about doing those things. Really, I think, and if you ever have those sort of interviews, I can give them just 5 or 6 minutes, but they would often take me 4 or 5 hours to edit too. And because I was slow, it's not my profession, but because they meant so much to me. But it's worth it, you know. Those stories, I can remember every word of some of those stories, you know. And those people have obviously have a huge, just have influenced me so much. Their personas, you know.
Kim, I'm going to read you a final comment from Louise Allerton, who's online. Thanks for advocating, Kim. I've just finished caring for my mum over the last 8 years. At times I could see my life flashing before me, but it was an incredibly privileged and rich time, but one that renders you largely invisible, except to the caring community.
Oh, good on you, Louise. What a way to end it. That's great.
Please join me again in thanking you.